Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're kicking off something a bit different. This is the first in a new series, and it's designed specifically for you, the facilitators stepping into the Agenda Gap program. Think of it today as, getting the lay of the land, the big picture view. Future deep dives will really get into the weeds, breaking down each workshop step by step. So, our main topic, the Agenda Gap program. And the name itself kind of gives it away, right? It's about bridging that gap, the gap between what young people experience and the policies that affect their lives. The real goal is centering their expertise to boost mental health in their communities. It does this through, getting them involved in action, influencing policy, and promoting their own well-being, plus that of their peers, families, and, everyone.
Exactly. And for you listening right now, the mission for this session is pretty straightforward. It's to really get a handle on Agenda Gap, what it's for, how it works, and maybe most importantly, your specific role as a facilitator. This is basically the foundation we need before we start exploring each workshop in detail later on.
Okay, so we've touched on the what's, but let's maybe unpack the why a bit more. Why focus specifically on policy when we're talking about youth mental health? Seems like a big leap for some.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It gets right to the core, actually. Policies, they're kind of like the invisible rules and guidelines shaping our everyday lives. And what's really powerful is that even seemingly small policy changes can have these huge ripple effects. Think about like a local school deciding to use a mental health curriculum that students helped create, or maybe a town council putting aside funds for youth-led wellness projects. Those small things can really build momentum.
Right.
And youth absolutely have a right to have a say in policies affecting them, but the reality is they're often left out of the conversation, disenfranchised. So equipping them, giving them the tools and the platform helps make sure policy actually reflects their reality.
That really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
Sure.
How many important perspectives we've probably missed over the years. So if the aim is creating conditions for good mental health, is Agenda Gap more about promotion, like building wellness, rather than just fixing problems?
Oh, absolutely. That's a key part of its strengths-based approach. It's really guided by mental health promotion, which isn't just about treating illness after it appears. It's about creating the conditions where good mental health can flourish in the first place.
Yeah.
So that means looking at the root causes, things like inequities, social factors that challenge well-being, and the program uses policy very intentionally as a tool to strengthen well-being, reduce those structural barriers, and make sure resources go where they're needed to support everyone's mental health.
That sounds really holistic.
Yeah.
So connecting the dots, Agenda Gap is essentially building capacity through partnerships, using policy advocacy to get youth voices onto the agenda for real systems change. And you mentioned it wasn't just dreamed up in an office somewhere, it was built with youth.
Exactly. It was developed in partnership with a diverse group of young people right from the start. And then it was tested, refined with other youth from different backgrounds, different places. That input was invaluable. It really shaped the whole thing.
I bet. That must make it resonate much more authentically.
It absolutely does. It means the content, the approach, it connects with their actual experiences, makes it way more effective. And a huge piece of this, really central, is fostering positive relationships between the youth themselves and, critically, between youth and adult allies. That's you. We know these relationships are just fundamental for healthy development, for well-being. And the program intentionally nurtures these connections over several months through all the workshops and content.
Okay, so there's a structure to how this unfolds. You mentioned phases.
Yes, 4 distinct phases that guide the youth.
Right. Walk us through those.
Okay, so phase 1 is really about building those connections, fostering relationships, and getting some foundational knowledge down.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Starting point.
Then phase 2 starts bridging that knowledge with actual action planning. How do we use what we know?
Okay, moving towards doing.
Phase 3 is where it gets really active, partnering up to make that action plan happen. Youth-driven policy change in action.
Right, the implementation.
And finally, phase 4 isn't really an endpoint. It's about maintaining that connection, sustaining the work, monitoring the impact beyond the main program workshops.
Okay, a clear progression.
Yeah, and as the youth and the adult allies, move through these phases together, they build this deeper understanding of all the things social, structural, cultural, environmental that feed into mental health. And alongside that understanding, they're developing real practical skills. Skills for making policy change happen, whether that's local, provincial, federal, or even broader. The idea is they leave knowing how to make change.
That's a really powerful outcome. So let's get into the nuts and bolts then. How does this look week to week? You mentioned 14 workshops.
That's right, 14 distinct workshops. And you can really see the journey just in the titles. Like, it starts with getting to know each other, moves into things like Mental Health Promotion 101, and then progresses to sessions where they're actively designing their projects, like creating your change and crafting your campaign.
Okay, so there's a clear path.
Right.
And what's a typical workshop like? Is there a set structure facilitators, like our listeners, can expect?
Yes, definitely. Consistency is key here. Each workshop is about 2 hours long, and they all follow this five-part structure. First, you've got the welcome, pretty standard group welcome, quick individual check-ins, how's everyone doing? Second is connect and open. This is where you look back, recap the last session, and then look forward, what are we doing today? It's also a chance to see what everyone already knows and gather a bit of feedback.
Okay, setting the stage.
Then third is frame. This usually involves watching some video content. Could be something the team made or maybe something the group found that relates to their interests. Fourth, and this is a big part, is activities. Here, you facilitate and you participate, too, in group activities. These are designed to promote mental health, drawing on things like social and emotional learning, self-awareness, empathy, making good decisions. They reinforce the learning goals and to give everyone practice in, the skills needed for policy advocacy.
So active learning, practicing skills.
Exactly. And finally, number 5 is connect and close. Wrapping things up. Check in about how the session went, give a quick preview of what's next, and maybe set an intention for participation going forward. Often include some small skill-building things they can try out in their daily lives.
That sounds really well thought out. That consistent structure must help build confidence and understanding week by week. So moving through these workshops, they identify what helps mental health in their community, and that leads them to pick a topic for advocacy.
Precisely. They identify the issues, they choose something they're passionate about changing, and their goals, their strategies, they all come out of these interactive activities and the practice they get in advocating for policy change.
Okay, so that brings us to the role of the facilitator, our listeners. Given this whole structure, the focus on youth leadership, what's expected of them? What's their core role?
Yeah, your role is absolutely crucial, but maybe not in the way people first think. You're really expected to be a co-learner alongside the youth, not necessarily the expert on every single topic. What's really essential is your curiosity, your ability to see and appreciate the strength youth bring, your willingness to explore new ideas with them, and your genuine interest in supporting them to co-develop knowledge and build those partnerships. It's about enabling them.
I like that framing, co-learner, not expert. That probably takes some pressure off. But what advice would you give someone new who feels like they should have all the answers?
I'd say lean into that shared learning. Honestly, your authenticity, being willing to say, I don't know, let's find out together, that builds so much more trust than pretending. It really opens the door for genuine collaboration. And speaking of collaboration, there's a framework that really underpins this. It's the Search Institute's Developmental Relationships Framework. It gives adult allies you 5 key elements to focus on.
Okay, what are those?
First, express care. Show them they matter to you. Simple, but powerful. Second, challenge growth. Encourage them. Push them gently to keep learning and improving. Third, provide support. Help them navigate tasks, overcome obstacles, reach their goals, be practical. Fourth, share power. This is big. Treat them with respect. Give them a real voice, a real say in what happens. And fifth, expand possibilities. Connect them to people, places, ideas that broaden their horizons.
Express care, challenge growth, provide support, share power, expand possibilities. That sounds like a really solid guide for building those relationships.
Yeah.
What about the practical side? Week to week, what are the concrete things facilitators need to do?
Right, the practical expectations. Well, each week, you need to be ready to connect the group with outside resources or expertise. That could mean inviting a guest speaker, maybe helping research a specific policy, or supporting the youth if they want to conduct interviews, whatever supports their goals. A really big focus is on creating program safety, using what's called a trauma and violence-informed approach.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
It means understanding that people might have past experiences that affect how they engage. So you create an environment that feels safe, predictable, empowering. Practically, this involves things like building a community agreement together with the youth right at the start. What are our group norms? Identifying support resources they can access if needed. Setting clear expectations. Approaching difficult conversations with openness, curiosity, validating different viewpoints. Always focusing on strengths. And building in regular check-ins and breaks. Super important. Oh, and also tracking the group's wins. Policy change is slow work. Celebrating successes along the way keeps everyone motivated.
That makes a lot of sense. Keep the momentum going. What else?
You'll also need to be proactive about addressing any barriers youth might face to participating. Things like, school conflicts, transport issues, financial stuff, and figuring out appropriate compensation, maybe an honorarium, maybe an hourly wage, school credits, a certificate. It needs to be fair and acknowledge their contribution. Using those anonymous workshop evaluation surveys, the AWE surveys after each session is also key. Get that feedback, show you listening and responding, and of course, basic prep. Review the workshop content beforehand, save the work the group produces, encourage them to think about the ideas between sessions, and setting up shared digital spaces like a Google Drive for documents, a whiteboard tool for brainstorming is pretty essential.
Got it. So equipment-wise, it sounds like reliable internet, access to tools like Google Drive, maybe a digital whiteboard account, and a way to run those AWE surveys, like free tools, Qualtrics, or something similar that work on phones or computers.
Exactly. Nothing too fancy, but those collaborative tools are important. And remember, you're not expected to do this all on your own. Agenda Gap is designed for multiple facilitators. You need at least two. This guide, the slide sets, the online materials, those are your core resources. But you can also reach out directly to the Agenda Gap team if you have questions about anything, process, content, whatever. And there are provided support resources available for both the youth and for you, the facilitators.
That support structure sounds really important. Okay, so we've covered a lot today. We've done this foundational deep dive into Agenda Gap. We looked at its core mission, how the workshops flow, and your absolutely vital role as a facilitator. And like we said, this is just the beginning. The next 14 dives will give you those specific blueprints for each workshop.
Right. And as you get ready to step into this role, to be that adult ally, maybe just take a moment to consider this. How might fostering these developmental relationships, expressing care, sharing power, all of it, how might that not only empower youth to shape mental health policy, but also how might it profoundly shift your understanding of community, well-being, and maybe the real power we have when we act together? Something to think about.